Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. South Asia remains one of the least integrated regions of the world. When we talk about Shanghai Cooperation Organizations, around and more than 40% of the world's population is included in SCO, and of course its aim was to foster peace and prosperity in the region. Pakistan recently extended invitation to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for upcoming SEO Summit. Now the question remains, will Modi attend this summit or will he not? There are a lot of speculations when we talk about PM Narendra Modi's of course inclusion in this summit and about his participation in the upcoming summit. There are also a lot of questions when we talk about connectivity within this region, and Pakistan's and India's enduring rivalry remains one of the key issues when we talk about this region being least connected in the world. In today's program, we will be talking about all these dimensions of SCO and Pakistan-India relations, and will this upcoming summit highlight the divisions within the region, or it would be a step forward in bringing these countries together? To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Mr. Jauhar Saleem, who is a former Foreign Secretary and current President IRS. Welcome to the program. We're also joined by Mr. Sheharyar, who is analyst. Welcome to the program. So, Mr. Jauhar, let me start with the basic questions. There is a lot of speculations that are going on about the upcoming SEO Summit, and a lot of eyes are on Islamabad and New Delhi. What are your expectations regarding Modi's participations in the upcoming summit, given the past history of his, decline to be engaging in any sort of regional summits or head of government summits?
Yes, that's a very important question, of course. SEO is a huge organization in terms of its economic imprint, in terms of its membership. The countries which are represented in this organization are some of the biggest, most populous countries in the world, and economically as well, some of the most dynamic. Now the question remains, like you said, when this conference takes place in Islamabad in October, whether Narendra Modi, Prime Minister of India, will participate or not. That question acquires greater significance because of the dynamics of Pakistan-India relations in the last few years, where there has been literally a downgrading of the relations to the point that was not witnessed in many instances in the last 76 years or so. Secondly, what we see is, diplomatically, the two countries, they don't even have ambassadors in each other's capitals right now, and sort of, there's a total breakdown of dialogue. But we also have to remember that India, in many ways, has been rather having second thoughts about its membership of the SEO, or at least, if not its membership of the SEO, about its role in the SEO. Because initially it was very enthusiastic, and in fact it had made a great deal of effort to become a full member. But subsequently, as the divergence between the US and China grew, and as Russia and China grew together in the aftermath, in the wake of the Ukraine war, what many analysts noticed was that India started sort of, in some ways walking back in terms of its engagement with SEO.
Do you think this is kind of a balancing act on the part of India to keep a balance regarding its Western allies and China's rivalry in the region?
Yes, of course, it's part of their strategy. They talk a lot about what they call strategic autonomy. But within that strategic autonomy, what India has been doing is, it has been playing both sides. It is getting all the economic benefits, all the strategic benefits of its newfound closeness with the Western camp, particularly the United States, as being part of the so-called Indo-Pacific strategy, as being part of Quad, as being part of others, so many groups being formed to contain China. On the other hand, it has been accruing so many benefits from enhancement of trade with Russia, when Russia is sort of, in the midst of so many sanctions. But India-Russia trade has increased manifold. It is also continuing its trade with China. China, it's one of the biggest trading partners. So it's a very deft game they are playing, and they're trying to sort of, accrue benefits from wherever they can come. In that context, now what they see SEO as is an organization where they can be present, but they again see it as an organization which has sort of a greater imprint of China, which is basically an organization of Russia and China primarily as the nucleus.
We will talk about the significance of presence of China and Russia in this particular organization as well, and their influence on Pakistan and India relations within SEO as well later in the program. But Sheharyar, what's your take on this invite that Pakistan sent to Prime Minister Narendra Modi? And in your opinion, will Modi attend this summit? And if not, how will the world perceive India's absence from this summit as their we can say commitment to regional cooperation?
So Maryam, the invitation that Pakistan sent to Prime Minister Modi to attend this conference is basically a compulsion. It's not a choice.
Of course, of course.
Secondly, if you look at Prime Minister Modi's recent policy towards SEO, I also agree that he is trying to move away from it or keep a small distance, because if we remember that the last two heads, I think Council of Heads government.
In Astana, he did not attend.
Yeah, he didn't attend the last two ones. So again, when it comes to geopolitical dynamics, I think India is trying to distance itself, because now India has to make a choice when it comes to global geopolitics, whether it wants to be in the US camp or basically the China camp.
But when we talk about SEO and with SARC being practically dead because of India's role within SARC, do you think that this is going to be a negative thing on part of India's foreign policy regarding its presence within the region? Because of course India also needs its access to cars as well.
So when it comes to the dynamics of SEO, they are quite different as compared to SARC.
Of course,
in SEO, obviously there are two emerging superpowers, Russia and China, and India has been very close to Russia historically. And again, it's a military and economic partner for India. So totally outrightly rejecting or distancing itself from SEO, I don't think India is in a favor or in a position to do that. But at the same time, the investments and the technology transfer that India is getting from the US side or its Western stakeholders, that's something that India cannot ignore as well. So India is trying to tread a very thin and very fine line when it comes to balancing the two, I would say, international blocks. So when it comes
But Sheharyar, there are a lot of concerns and questions regarding portraying SEO as anti-Western, of course, power or bloc as well.
That so is what's your perception. That is a perception that is being propagated by the Western bloc. Technically speaking, SEO is more of a regional cooperation or regional integration hub that is fast emerging, and a lot of other countries that are emerging economic powers have either joined it or have also submitted their applications to become full-time members. So this is a very prime regional integration platform which is taking a lot of interest. And obviously when it comes to the integration, when it comes to economic policies of this region, they will be really depending on SEO, and it would be put India at a very awkward position if it tries to isolate it or tries to distance from it, because I also see a lot of Southeast Asian economies now taking a lot of interest in SEO. when it comes to regional integration and the kind of resources and natural resources that are available in Central Asian republics. I don't think India would want to lose out on that opportunity and give that space to China, which is already investing heavily in this region.
Right, and Jauhar Sahab, in your opinion, to what extent China's influence within SEO shape the dynamics of Pakistan-India relations within SEO specifically?
Now, first of all, like I said, because of the greater imprint of China within SEO and the fact that India now sees it as a sort of China-Russia collaboration primarily, which is not being very much approved of by the West, they have started to be being less enthusiastic. That is one thing. In terms of relations with Pakistan, what we have to see is so far what the Indians have said into the questions whether they would participate or not, at the Prime Minister's level, they have said no update. That has been the official line. Now, there have been either, like, in the previous versions of the conference, they have been either, not representing them, like the country at the top level, or at one point when India was hosting it, they chose to have a virtual conference instead, and then in a way downgrading again. If Modi decides to come, that would only be in terms of the context of Pakistan-India relations, whether he would want this opportunity for re-engagement to be utilized or not. So far, we don't really see a great deal of indications in that direction. I would refer you to the latest some statement that was Jaishankar. He made this statement while there was this book launch going on, Strategic Conundrums, Reshaping India's Foreign Policy. That was book launch of a book by a friend of his, Rajiv Sikri. There, what he said about in the context of Pakistan, I think was important, and that's what he said. First of all, he said the era of uninterrupted dialogue is over. Then he said actions have consequences, and
whether positive or negative.
Whether positive or not or negative. But then again, he said we will not be passive. We will respond to those actions or aversions. And but in subsequent because it was a whole speech which gave an overview of India's foreign policy in terms of their perspective. He talked about all the other countries in the region as well, and then Pakistan. He began with Pakistan, and then he mentioned Pakistan again. But between the lines, what you could notice was that India is endeavoring to build an architecture of regional integration, where they are the nucleus, and every other country is like a satellite, revolving around India or being a client state to India, not just economically, but also in some ways, and then we mentioned that, like culturally and whatever historical commonalities or whatever. And in that, he mentioned that India would be generous, India would be willing to share the rising tide, that India is with others, but not Pakistan. He qualified that as well. So I think, if you keep in view that rhetoric, then one would be rather tentative in in expecting whether he would attend the meeting. Because if he attends the meeting, then the attention would shift towards the possibilities of re-engagement between Pakistan and India. So it would be
right. And when we talk about re-engagement, within the context and ambit of SEO, there is a lot of focus on cooperation regarding security as well. So, do you think that could provide a common ground for Pakistan and India to engage? Or this is very unrealistic optimism?
In terms of the security spectrum, of course, the two countries are absolutely in a very different perspective. So it's hard,
especially since 2019.
And even before that, in terms of our security perceptions, we see India as a threat, quite frankly, and Indians in terms of their security perspective, they don't really look at Pakistan very kindly. So it's hard to see that type of a cooperation at this point in time. But in terms, and SEO is having a greater emphasis on economic cooperation, over the years as we see. And India, but you see India, I don't think, at this point in time, I think they are more interested perhaps sort of, in building their own architecture. Because in the same lecture or speech that I mentioned, he spoke about BIMSTEC, Now BIMSTEC, they're setting it up, or at least they're trying to promote it as a parallel organization to SAR, which they don't want to revive as much. Why? Because Pakistan will have an important role in SAR, and BIMSTEC, Pakistan is not there. So I think this alternative view that they are having now, whereby they want to exclude Pakistan, but is that a benign view? Is that a perspective which can flourish, or which can sort of, in terms of the longer term objectives, it can serve those objectives well? I don't think so. I think they cannot exclude Pakistan. They cannot exclude Pakistan neither from the region, geographically,
because
it's not possible.
Of course, our strategic location.
Our location, our population, and our role in the region, and like within the Muslim world as well. Whether they can't just wish us away. They will have to engage with Pakistan at some point in time, and the terms of engagement have to be balanced ones. The terms of engagement have to be mutually beneficial. So I think India has to change its orientation. They have to come up with fresh thinking, in sort of constructive, with a constructive approach. Because until and unless they do that, this policy will not work in the longer term.
Right. And Sheharyar, when we talk about India's consideration, how significant is Modi's domestic policy in shaping its views towards regional organizations like SEO or its relations with Pakistan?
So, Maryam, when it comes to the recent elections in which Prime Minister Modi won, we have to keep one thing in mind, that the whole anti-Pakistan policy or the approach towards election did not really serve him a lot at this time around. So even the dynamics within India's geographical bounds are changing, the requirements of the voters are changing, and by externalizing the issues that India is facing domestically, they could not garner a lot of support in the elections. So when it comes to Modi's Pakistan policy, which focuses broadly around isolating Pakistan in the region and at the global scale, that policy hasn't really given a lot of fruit to Prime Minister Modi, and that if you see it in conjunction with the SEO policy, I think the Modi regime would have to re-evaluate how they would be dealing with SEO. Again, when it comes to distancing itself from the platform of SEO, what India is inadvertently doing is giving all of that space to China. And when it comes to the power competition,
and with Russia already engaged in the Ukraine war, of course,
engaged, and what India is trying to ignore, and I probably think that would not be a wise move, is how the Central Asian states are viewing all of this scenario. Again, historically, Central Asian states have been very dependent on Russia and Russian access to the European market to export their gas and petroleum and all of those other natural resources, energy. And now, even when it comes to the Ukrainian issue that Russia is facing, and now it's isolated from the European market, the Central Asian republics are looking for an outlet. And the biggest outlet they basically see is through Afghanistan and down to the Arabian Sea, and from there they can diversify to the Middle East, they can diversify to South Asia and even Southeast Asia. And now if because of Pakistan or international, I would even say geopolitical rivalry that is now emerging, if India chooses to distance itself from the platform of SEO, it's like leaving a large chunk of economic pie that is there to be taken, and it's opening all of that space and giving it to China. So I don't think that would be a very smart move on part of the Modi regime to give all of that space. And again, when it comes to your previous question on counterterrorism and security cooperation, SEO's security mandate is very in line with Pakistan's national security policy, and they have also developed a regional anti-terrorist structure as well. And Pakistan is like using that structure very well in putting or projecting its security concerns vis-a-vis Afghanistan, and taking all of the regional stakeholders on board and bringing all of them on one page. And India, unfortunately, basically places all of their security concerns on Pakistan's.
Right.
So that's like a lot of areas where divergence is like taking place.
Of course. We are talking about the invite that Pakistan sent to Prime Minister Narendra Modi for the upcoming SEO Summit, and how Pakistan-India rivalry is going to be impacting SEO Summit and what needs to be done in this regard. We will be taking a short break here, and when we come back, we will be discussing about the significance of cars and how Pakistan and India need to engage with those countries as well. Take a short break. Welcome back. We are talking about the upcoming SEO Summit that is to be held in Islamabad, and will this summit of course help to fill the gap that is between the countries within the region, and to enhance connectivity and cooperation within the countries. We are talking about this, and Mr. Jauhar, when we talk about India's ties with other SEO member states, specifically cars, do you think that is going to be a factor that is going to be enhancing its role within SEO?
Well, cars are an important constituent of SEO. For a long time, other countries, since the cars got their independence, they tried to establish closer economic relations with these countries because they have a great deal of potential. You know, they are energy-rich countries, and there were very many energy projects which were sort of, on the board. But many of those did not happen because of lack of instability and not having peace in Afghanistan, as we all know. Like, for instance, India was part of some projects from where it withdrew, Having said that, India has been able to establish significant trade with car countries. Whether India needs the institutional mechanisms being developed by SEO for promoting further trade, of course it could benefit. At the same time…
But Joseph, don't you think there is a rivalry between Pakistan and India regarding establishment of relations with cars countries as well, regarding, of course, the resources that those countries do have?
Yeah, we have to mention here that in terms of the relations with car countries, Pakistan was very keen. Of course, these are countries of Muslim majority countries, and sort of, and we have linkages of sort of, history and cultures and all that. But over the years, since the 90s, we endeavored to create bigger trade with these countries. Unfortunately, that could not happen. But some other countries are much more successful in that, and we should admit that. For instance, I would say Turkey. Turkey was very successful in establishing very close economic cooperation with these countries, both trade cooperation and investment cooperation. And similarly, China. China was able to establish very significant trade with these countries and a great deal of investment cooperation as well. I would say neither Pakistan nor India was able to emulate that. Now, the shortcomings were because of various reasons. From our perspective, it was because most of the projects that we had envisioned had to go through Afghanistan, and the lack of stability in Afghanistan, it really hampered and affected those. But even otherwise, we were not able to build the trade to the extent that we should have, and neither was India. to the extent that China was.
But when we talk about of course, the lack of that much trade volume or trade ties with CARS countries, Jauhar Sahab, do you think that, of course, projects like Belt and Road Initiative can play a significant role in enhancing that? And of course, India is not very much keen in BRI and rather is opposing the project. And SEO has focused on economic cooperation within the region as well. So how all these factors play?
Yes, India is not part of BRI.
Of course.
So, and like you said, they are probably in the opposing camp. Having said that, India, does not see CARS as one of the most important regions from its perspective. CARS are landlocked. The way through CARS in terms of land goes through Pakistan and Afghanistan.
And Afghanistan, yeah.
So that probably lessens their enthusiasm for sort of closer land sort of corridors with the CAR countries. The shipping routes are pretty circuitous as well. And then the SAARC countries, the CAR countries, their sort of energy corridors and their sort of energy infrastructure is either sort of they had with Russia before. Now they have a step. Some of those countries have very successfully diverted that towards Europe. Azerbaijan is a big example. Others have built those linkages with China, and those are mega players. So I think India, I don't really see particularly strong efforts from India to build those linkages with CAR countries. And perhaps that would explain part of the reason that initially they were enthusiastic with SEO because they felt that perhaps it would help them build closer linkages with CAR countries. But when they analyzed it in terms of cost and benefit analysis, then they perhaps felt that it wasn't really worth that much of an effort.
So do you think that there is no competition when we talk about the CARS countries within Pakistan and India?
The competition may have been there, but the fact is that I would argue that neither of the two countries
are that much interested
has been particularly successful. No, Pakistan is very interested. Pakistan has been very interested. Pakistan continues to be very interested, and trade linkages and energy corridors with CAR countries would be an important segment of CPEC project as well. We have we had envisioned projects like TAPI, for instance, CASA 1000 and then CASA 2000, for instance. There are many other projects on the line, and we inked many agreements with those countries. We have made a great deal of effort. India hasn't to that extent. We have been always involved in the SICA meetings, for instance. SEO meetings very enthusiastically. We have been part of that. Not India. So there's a difference of the level of enthusiasm that Pakistan and India has, or the level of appetite that Pakistan and India has for fostering greater cooperation.
Right, and let me take the same point to
countries.
Sheharyar. What do you think is the reason for India's lack of appetite when we talk about specific region and regional integration? Do you think India's involvement in Western blocs like Quad might be one of the reasons that it is less inclined for looking for enhancing ties within the region?
So Maryam, I also agree with Mr. Jauhar here that when it comes to the cost benefit analysis of choosing either the Western Bloc or SEO's platform, I think India would more be inclined towards the Western Bloc. Recently, again, even when you talk about the Quad, India hasn't been very enthusiastic. They haven't even sent their representation up till now to be part of the Quad. I think right now India is benefiting a lot when it comes to Western investments that are taking place in India's economy, and they are treading very carefully and balancing the act. Again, when it comes to cost benefit analysis, I don't see India envisioning a lot of returns from being part of SEO. Again, the missing piece of the puzzle, or I would say the problematic piece of the puzzle, would always remain Afghanistan when it comes to the whole regional integration framework that SEO aspires to work on. Afghanistan's instability, the whole security environment, is very precarious, and it's not looking as if it would get better in the
But Sheharyar, don't
coming
you think
time.
that should be one of the reasons that both countries need to engage in bilateral ties, specifically when we talk about counter-terrorism efforts?
Well, counterterrorism efforts, I think right now Pakistan suffers a lot more when it comes to the security issues emanating from Afghanistan, and when it comes to Pakistan's outreach to cars, I think it's more dependent on SEO and the cooperation frameworks that are there. India as such is not affected that much by any international or regional terrorist organizations. So even when it comes to security dynamics and the threat matrix that both countries are operating from, I don't think they see this whole issue from the same page or same light.
Right, right,
No.
right. So, Mr. Jauhar, when we talk about SEO, there are, of course, public diplomacy initiatives as well, specifically focusing on humanitarian issues and cultural, of course, dimensions as well. Do you think it could be one of the dimensions that could bring Pakistan and India together? And if both countries are not engaged at SEO level, then what would be the factors, or what are hopes for easing the current tensions between both the countries?
Well, firstly, SEO is a great forum, and it can help besides promoting political understanding, economic cooperation, security cooperation. It could also promote cultural cooperation, cultural exchanges. That is there. But if India is not interested in that, which seems to be the case presently, then of course they are not going to benefit from the avenues which SEO provides in that particular segment. Now, having said that, I would say that India, in my view, is not adopting a policy which is in their own long-term interest. Because you cannot exclude Pakistan, you cannot isolate Pakistan, you cannot wish Pakistan away. Pakistan is a reality in the region. Like I said, Pakistan is a reality, in the world, within the Muslim world, and in its economic potential. This is something that cannot be undermined. India, which would be much better advised to come up with a constructive and a positive approach, where they should rather re-engage with Pakistan, try to come up with a dialogue for resolving the bilateral disputes.
Right, and of course, when we talk about dialogue, the key issue remains Kashmir issue. So, keeping in mind that Pakistan is going to be hosting SEO Summit this time around, do you think Pakistan can play a role in advocating for the Kashmir issue, or do you think this would be what are our expectations regarding the issues, specifically in regards to India, that Pakistan should be bringing up or engaging in?
Yeah, and Pakistan always provides diplomatic, moral and political support to Kashmiris, and particularly their right of self-determination, and uses all possible forums to do that. And SEO is a very important forum. Now, having stated that, you see, as I said, again recently, when Jaishankar said in the same speech that I referred to earlier, he said Article 370 is a done thing. It's basically what he meant was that it's done away and that is permanent. That is not the right approach.
Of course.
Because if India comes up with this type of a unilateral approach, where they think that they can just decide things on their own, with total disregard to international law, total disregard to United Nations Security Council resolutions, total disregard to even bilateral understandings such as Shimla agreements. I would say a wiser approach for India would be to take part in the SEO Summit taking place in Pakistan at the Prime Minister's level. Prime Minister Modi should attend, to demonstrate that India is interested in SEO, that India is interested in regional integration, and India is interested in re-engaging with Pakistan, because
And what are the possible outcomes, Mr. Jauhar, if Modi in fact attends this summit?
If Modi attends this summit, of course, this would reiterate the fact that they are still interested in SEO, about which a lot of analysts are having doubts. Secondly, that would also show that they are interested, like I said, in regional integration, and most of all, that they are interested in having a more responsible attitude towards Pakistan, more responsible approach towards Pakistan, of re-engaging, because that is the only wise way forward for the two countries.
Right. And Sheharyar, given the history of other regional, of course, such organizations like SAARC being paralyzed by India-Pakistan rivalry, how significant is this upcoming summit of SEO going to be regarding facilitation of dialogue between both the countries?
So, Maryam, India has been very adamant when it comes to dealing with Pakistan again, and the mandate of SEO bilateral issues are not really discussed on that platform.
But side talks can be...
It can be icebreaker, and it could facilitate some sort of like cooperation, but a strategic shift in Pakistan-India relations, I don't see that happening in this forum. And again, if Prime Minister Modi decides to come to Pakistan, that would point towards a significant shift in India's policy when it comes to Pakistan. But I personally don't see that happening this time around.
Right, and when we talk about previous SEO summit last year, in fact, in July 2023, where Pakistan participated, do you think there are some lessons that can be learned from Pakistan's participation? And what are those lessons, and can India be of course focusing on some of the issues that are important not only for both the countries, like poverty remains one of the main issues that India is also fighting, and of course Pakistan is also fighting, and other areas of cultural engagement as well?
Cultural engagement, other than that, poverty, reducing poverty, job creation, and a huge youth bulge. That's like one areas where SEO can be a platform in connecting all of these diverse countries. Pakistan, as we've seen, has been more, I would say, strategic or a mature approach has been seen. When it comes to India, it's like more treading a very thin line, a balancing act. Or I would say they have like looked at it at the SEO platform with a lot of caution. And even last week on Friday, Prime Minister Modi went to Ukraine and Kiev, and a lot of visuals came from that side in which he embraced Zelensky, and he also, even though he asked Zelensky to sit on the table and like have some sort of negotiations with Russia, but that was a pointer towards the West, that India is trying to balance its relationship between Russia. Historically, a lot of players in Washington or the Western Bloc, they're observing and they're not really happy with the way India has basically positioned itself when it comes to the Russia-Ukraine issue. And that is like, I think, giving more indicators towards how Prime Minister Modi and his counterparts would be dealing with the SEO as well this time around.
Right. And Mr. Jauhar, what lessons can be learned from previous instances where Pakistan and India did engage in such regional organizations, summits in the past, of course, like SEO, and how could it inform the decisions or participations or the issues to be discussed for the upcoming SEO summit?
Yeah, in the past we have seen instances where such conferences had helped in breaking the ice between these two countries, and they have been used in that for that particular purpose, to re-engage or sort of to raise the level of dialogue between the two countries, and was for the good of the two countries. I think that is what needs to be done now as well. And Indian policymakers, like I said, they would be well advised to see it as an opportunity to reconnect with a constructive approach, with a positive approach, because that is the only approach which is going to work. Because otherwise we have a region which houses 1/4 of the world population, which has become hostage to India's quest for hegemony. And that is not a durable policy. That cannot be a durable policy. See, if right now, what is happening in South Asia? India is not having great relations with most of the countries, whether it's Bangladesh, whether it's Nepal, whether it's Sri Lanka, whether it's Maldives. They're having problems everywhere. So this is not serving their interest. If they want to sort of, to forge mutually beneficial partnerships with the countries of the region, if they want to promote regional integration, and if they want to grow bigger in terms of the international stature, the way forward is through cooperation. The way forward is through promoting trust, through building linkages, rather than sort of trying to isolate, rather than trying to exclude others, and rather than trying to undermine other countries of the region.
Right. Thank you very much, Mr. Jauhar Saleem, for joining us in today's program. Thank you very much, Mr. Sheharyar Khan, for joining us in today's program. Of course, as we conclude today's discussion, the upcoming summit and Pakistan's invite to India has opened up many possibilities. But when we talk about regional connectivity and peace and stability within this region, effective multilateralism remains one of the significant factors that can lead towards, of course, peace and security within the region. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.